My name is Terrie. I'm an alcoholic. It's an honor to be here tonight. And I deeply apologize for our tardiness. We actually were on the same boat as our friends from Bainbridge, but they were way in front of us on the front deck. We were back somewhere. So I'm so sorry we're late tonight, but we're so glad to be here. Thanks so much for having us. I told Maureen on the way here I haven't prepared anything, but I will tell you this. My sobriety date is February 15th, 2012. I have a sponsor. She has a wonderful sponsor, my grant sponsor. I have 3 sponsees, and my life is wonderful. I never thought I'd hit double digits in sobriety, and celebrating 10 years was a big deal for me because I didn't get in here till I was 63. I'm kind of the poster woman for senior citizen sobriety. And, someone once said, God may be slow, but he's never late. And that was for me. He wasn't late. I had to drink every drink and experience every damn thing I went through to get here. And it's just great. And if anybody's new here, please stay. So it says sit, stay, like a dog. Sit, stay, and leave it. Leave it alone. Leave it. One of the little background, I grew up in home in New Jersey. We migrated from the Bronx, Irish Catholic family, 6 children. My mother was a late stage alcoholic by the end of her drinking, or maybe she hit the ground running with that. I don't know, but she went through a lot of hardship in her life. She was orphaned at 6 months during the 1918 flu, kicked around by relatives for months and months, years actually. And her father, severely alcoholic. And I bring this up because I do believe I have a genetic predisposition. I do believe that I, as an alcoholic, I process alcohol different from what a normal drinker is. And I don't say normal people because I don't think we're abnormal people. I'm an abnormal drinker. I'm abnormal in certain areas of my life, and just ask my children. They'll tell you all about that. But anyway, so I believe it's the first sip of the first drink that gets me drunk. The cells start responding differently to alcohol than my brother, 4 brothers, sister, we all grew up in the same family, and only 2 of us are alcoholics. 4 brothers. 2 are crazy, but they're not alcoholics. But anyway, so I believe I do process alcohol on a cellular level different from other people. And once I have alcohol out of my system, then this starts. Then the mental disease starts. That knowing what I know, I still get that thought, well, maybe this time it'll be different. Maybe this time. And it was never different. But my mother ended up, her father fathered 2 more children, 2 boys who both later in life died horrible alcoholic deaths. One head-on collision drunk, the other one cirrhosis of the liver. Her father had the dubious distinction of being deported back to Ireland for his drunkenness. Came to the land of opportunity, and they sent him back to Ireland, where he died in the streets of Dublin. And I got to go there several years ago and put some of my mother's ashes at his grave. He died it was in a mass grave. He'd lived in a hostel of some sort in Ireland. So our family history is drenched in alcoholism. So, but I was going to be different. I wasn't going to be that bad. And it was my mother who, in the big book, they refer to the alcoholic of the hopeless variety. Asylums, shock treatments, all kinds of horrible things she went through, and with 6 children. So we were pretty much raised ourselves. We were feral children. My dad worked for National Distillers, traveling the country. I used to say he worked for National Distillers and she was in the consumer division. So poor mom, and we didn't understand anything about alcoholism. My dad never bothered to get into Al-Anon, and we weren't an Alateen or any kind of thing. We didn't know. We just thought she was choosing the bottle over us. So we were busy building resentments as children, not knowing anything about this disease. But the thing that she did do is she was in and out of AA. And I loved Alcoholics Anonymous. In New Jersey, go in the room, it was always a speaker meeting, probably at least 100 people in there. And the room would have this cloud of smoke. You had to kind of find your way in to get to the seat. And cake and with cigarettes, cake, and coffee, and a lot of laughing. A lot of laughing and fabulous speakers. I loved AA meetings from the time I was a kid. And I used to spend with my mom, my feet were dangling from a bar stool or dangling from a folding chair at an AA meeting. It was back and forth, and the constant heartache and disappointment. She'd have these beautiful windows of sobriety and then disappear for weeks at a time and have to be sent off someplace. But my thing was, I'll never be that bad. Oh, great, I got a timer, and I'm already pretty well done.
No, you have 15 minutes.
I'm 15, so I got 6 something left, though. Have I talked that long already?
No, that's how long you've talked.
Oh, it is? Okay, got to go by that. All right, thanks. So, don't get the backstory too long. Anyway, so I probably started drinking around 19, and at that time we had to drive over the state line. No, actually, I guess it was 18 because New Jersey was 21. We drove to New York State to get drunk, and it used to be 1 or 2 nights a week, and then it became 4 or 5 nights a week. And we were the kids who either didn't graduate from high school or had no future, and the other people went off and did things, and we were still driving up to New York State even past that age. But the kind of drinking that went on back then, the police didn't pull people over. They just escorted you home or said, get lost. And we drove over that state line, and I saw so many accidents, death, disfigurement. But just one example of how we drank back in those days. And I would drink 15 wild turkeys and Cokes. And I was a small girl. And I remember getting behind the wheel and a hand on one eye. But this one guy who I was crazy about, he smashed into a tree, crushed the side of his face, lost his eye, and then had his jaw was broken. He had it all wired up. And he got out of the hospital, and a week or two later, he's up at the bar drinking through the wiring. Now, if he had vomited, he would have died. But that's the way we drank. It was just the way we rolled. And it was just carnage, but it was never going to happen to me. And I kept telling myself, I'm not as bad as my mother. I'm just, as the book talks, I learned later, I was an alcoholic of sorts. So she was what's called a periodic. She would disappear. I know there's binge drinkers. I was a maintenance drinker with oftentimes when there was free booze or a wedding or any kind, then it was off to the races, get drunk and horrible, horrible hangovers. But I managed to get a degree and raised one child alone and then remarried and had 2 more children, ended up a single mom again. But I got a degree. I worked in a career that was very power driven. If you failed, I succeeded. It was one of those careers, so it was perfect for an untreated alcoholic. Perfect for me because I was all about me all the time. So my drinking, I describe it as ebbing and flowing. And that whole thing is I didn't get in trouble every time I drank, but whenever I was in trouble, I'd been drinking. And one of the good things I did when I first came into the program is I wrote a drunk history. And that really helped for me to see because I would minimize stuff. But when I started to write my life story and how alcohol had always been the underlying problem, it seemed. And, at the time, I didn't drink to get drunk. I drank to change the way I felt. That's why I drank. I didn't purposely go out to get drunk. I just wanted to change the way I felt. And what I also didn't understand was when I went into a bar or I went to any kind of thing where there's alcohol, and I kept saying, well, this time I'll only have 1 or 2 drinks. This time will be different. I thought at the second drink, I thought, oh, I just changed my mind. I just changed my mind. And what I didn't understand is I had lost the power of choice and control. I didn't have the power because I'm an alcoholic. Once I put a drop of alcohol in me, the phenomenon of craving is going to start. Nothing's going to get between me and a drink. Now nothing gets between me and AA. But back then, get out of my way. I'm gonna go for it. And it didn't happen every time, but most of the time it did. And I would stop drinking until I had to start. And I'd start drinking till I had to stop because it would always be something, some huge blow up with my daughter, fighting, Christmases, suicide attempts. I mean, you name it, shit went on. Excuse me, stuff went on all the time. And I'd say, okay, now this has to stop. And I tried everything. I tried therapy. Whenever I did the intake form, when it said, how many drinks do you drink? I put NA, which means not applicable. Not applicable. I did not want to talk. Only an alcoholic will pay someone to lie to, right? I'm paying somebody $100 an hour to lie to them. It happened for a while. Went to church, did a lot of praying, went on retreats, you know, went on, times of abstinence, and it always brought me back to the drink. And so I looked pretty good on the outside. I wasn't in great health, but I had a pretty darn good looking career. But my life, I was broken spiritually. It didn't matter how many awards I got or how anything that went right in my life. In the so many times in front of the mirror, you're a worthless piece of garbage because you can't stop drinking. And I finally, 10 years ago, shortly before I came in, I had gotten to that point. Nothing at that point, although I have to say, one of my sponsors would remind me, I'd say nothing big happened, but actually she'd say, Terrie, do you remember you were on the verge of suicide? I said, oh, okay, that. That was a time where, a turning point. I couldn't live with it or without it. And even with still having the car in the garage and the kids still talking to me, I got to that point where I said, I've got to stop. And I was somewhere one night drinking, and at some point this voice came into my head, and it said one word. It said, how much time do you have left? 8 minutes. How much? 3 minutes left. It said enough. It just said enough. So stumbled into AA. It was my second time. I had audited AA over years. I'd be in and out, sneaking out of meetings, listening. That's not for me. I'm not that bad yet. I wanted to wait till I was really bad. And I think for me also, and anybody who's new who hasn't, I did not have a lot of use for this big book for a long time. Now it's my book. It's my text. It's my divinely inspired book. And for those of you who might know, the Big Book of Alcoholics is one of 88 books in the Library of Congress, and a book that changed America, one of the books that changed America, which is really cool. But I loved, in the doctor's opinion, this was my life. I was restless, irritable, and discontented until I could experience the ease and comfort that comes with the few drinks that others take with impunity, without punishment. And I never was out without punishment. I could never drink successfully. The other line I love in this book on page 5 in Bill's story that I thought I could never relate to until I did a big book study and heard speakers talk about it. There's certain things, lines in books in the Bible. Jesus wept, call me Ishmael. And Bill says 3 words, I woke up. I woke up on page 5. This had to stop. I saw I couldn't take but one drink, and he was drunk the next day. And that was my story. Constantly, quitting, saying on the way home from work, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink. And the insanity of always walking out of the store with that bottle or overshooting the mark every single time. Again, I didn't realize I had lost the power of choice and control. I needed a power greater than Terrie. And I found it in the rooms of AA. And in the book also, I learned in the first 44 pages of this big book how I qualified as an alcoholic. the difference between a moderate drinker and a heavy drinker and an alcoholic. I know I'm an alcoholic by the way I feel when I'm not drinking. I know because I can't wait. In the beginning, I'm irritable, restless, and discontent unless I can work this program. But that's how I was with drinking and going through that first 44 pages. And the other sentence I hit here finally on page 44, it says, and this is my story, if when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably an alcoholic. And it was like, all right, I surrender. I got it. So again, this has been the best thing that's ever happened to me. I have an amazing sponsor. We work together a lot. I try to make sure I run things, my bright ideas, before her, before I do certain things. And I don't always like what she tells me, but I do it anyway, because that's how I'm trained to do it. Sit, stay, and leave it. You know, stick and stay. You stay a lot. So I think I almost said I'm at the end of my rope, but I think I'm at the end of my time, right? Am I at the end of my time? I am. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm glad I didn't forget.